People think you became cold, that you changed, that you stopped caring. But most of the time, that's not what happened. You cared for too long. You explained for too long. You waited for too long. And one day, something inside you simply stopped trying. Not because you stopped loving, not because you became cruel, but because exhaustion has a language too. And sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it feels like peace. And people misunderstand it. They call it coldness. But often it is just the moment someone finally chooses themselves. One of the strangest things about emotional exhaustion is how invisible it is. People do not see the months before the silence. They only notice the silence itself. They do not see how many times you tried to explain, how many nights you stayed awake thinking about what to say, how many times you chose understanding over anger, how many times you forgave things you should not have forgiven. They only notice when you stop, and suddenly they say, "You changed," but change did not happen in one moment. It happened slowly, quietly, in the spaces where disappointment kept repeating itself, in the moments where effort was never returned, in the conversations where you realized you were the only one trying to save something. People think distance arrives suddenly. It does not. Distance is often built one disappointment at a time, until one day you look at someone you once cared deeply for and feel tired instead of hopeful. And that is when everything changes. Exhaustion can look like indifference from the outside, but they are not the same thing. Indifference says, "I never cared." Exhaustion says, "I cared too much, for too long." That difference matters, because many people blame themselves for becoming distant. They think, maybe I became selfish. Maybe I am too cold now. But sometimes, distance is not selfishness. It is survival. There is only so much one person can carry. Only so much disappointment. Only so much waiting. Only so much emotional labor before the body and the mind begin protecting themselves. And protection does not always look gentle. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like leaving. Sometimes it looks like not replying to the message you would have answered a year ago. Not because you do not care, but because you are finally tired of proving that you do. And exhaustion has a strange honesty. It forces you to admit things your hope kept hiding. It shows you where effort has become one-sided. It shows you where love has become obligation. It shows you where your kindness has quietly turned into self-neglect. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. There is a hidden cost to always being the one who cares more. At first, it feels noble. You tell yourself you are being patient. You are being understanding. You are being mature. You are giving people space. You are choosing peace. But over time, something dangerous happens. You begin to confuse self-abandonment With love, you become the person who always adjusts, always waits, always forgives, always understands. And people get used to that, not because they are evil, but because people adapt to the version of you keep showing them. If you always stay, they stop fearing your absence. If you always forgive, they stop respecting your boundaries. If you always explain, they stop learning how to listen. And slowly, your love becomes expected, not appreciated. Expected. That is the danger. Because expectations are heavy, especially when they are built on your silence. You begin to feel resentment, not because you hate them, but because you disappeared inside the role of being needed. And one day, you realize you have been present for everyone except yourself. That realization is painful, but it is also the beginning of clarity. There comes a point when silence is no longer avoidance. It becomes self-respect. This is difficult for many people to understand because we are taught that love must always be loud, that care must always be proven, that if you are good, you will keep trying. But sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop explaining, not because you gave up, but because you finally understood that some people hear only what benefits them. Not every silence is weakness. Some silences are boundaries. Some silences are dignity. Some silences are the moment you decide you will no longer beg for clarity from people who enjoy confusion. There is power in no longer arguing for your worth. There is peace in no longer chasing people who are comfortable with your confusion. And that peace can feel unfamiliar because chaos often feels like love when it is all you have known. But peace is quieter. Peace does not perform. Peace simply lets you rest. And for many people, that rest feels strange at first, because they spent years believing love was supposed to hurt. People often misunderstand detachment. They think it means you stopped caring. But real detachment is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is understanding that not everything is yours to fix. Not everyone is yours to save. Not every broken thing must become your responsibility. Detachment says, I can love you without destroying myself. That is not coldness. That is maturity. Because love without boundaries becomes resentment. Care without honesty becomes exhaustion. And connection without respect becomes dependency. Detachment is not about becoming emotionless. It is about caring without drowning. It is about helping without abandoning yourself. It is about understanding that someone else's chaos cannot become your permanent address. And yes, some people will call that selfish, especially the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Let them. Not everyone will understand the version of you that finally chooses peace. That does not mean you are wrong. It means you are changing. After emotional shutdown, something strange happens. Life becomes quieter. At first, it feels empty because you were so used to emotional noise, used to overthinking, used to checking if they replied, used to replaying conversations, used to trying to decode people who never intended to be clear. And when that stops, silence arrives. Not dramatic silence, just space. And space can feel uncomfortable when you are used to chaos. You start wondering if something is wrong, if you should care more, if you are becoming too distant. But often, nothing is wrong. You are just experiencing what peace feels like after survival mode. And peace can feel boring to a nervous system trained by instability. That does not mean it is wrong. It means you are healing. Healing is not always beautiful. Sometimes it is just quiet. Sometimes it is learning not to react. Sometimes it is realizing you no longer miss what once consumed you. That is not emptiness. That is recovery. The goal is not to stop caring. It is to care differently, more honestly, more consciously, more in ways that do not destroy you. Because caring should not require self-erasure. Love should not require constant suffering. Kindness should not mean permanent exhaustion. Real care includes yourself. It includes your peace, your limits, your time, your dignity. Learning this takes time, especially if you were praised for being the one who tolerated everything. But eventually, you understand something. Being a good person does not mean being endlessly available. It means being honest. Honest about what you can give. Honest about what hurts. Honest about when enough is enough. And once you learn that, you stop confusing distance with failure. Sometimes, distance is the most loving thing you can choose. Not for them, for yourself. Some things do not become clear while you are explaining them. They become clear when you finally sit with yourself. Sometimes, writing is the first place where honesty feels safe. A quiet place to notice what changed, to ask better questions, to understand why something inside you stopped trying. If you need that space, there is something in the description. People may still think you changed. Let them. They did not see the years that shaped that silence. They did not carry what you carried. They only noticed when you finally put it down. And maybe that is enough. Maybe healing does not need to be understood by everyone. Maybe peace does not need an explanation. Sometimes peace looks like distance. Sometimes self-respect looks like silence. Sometimes love looks like leaving. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Because peace was never found in convincing them. It was found the moment you finally stopped.